Quote, "What is at stake in our economic decisions today," said Mr. Kennedy, "is not some grand warfare of rival ideologies, but the practical management of the modern economy." Unquote. At a time when every country in the world, including the enslaved ones, is torn by the life and death struggle of two opposite ideologies, freedom versus statism, Mr. Kennedy permits himself to sneer at some grand warfare of rival ideologies. Since he could not possibly mean that global conflict has somehow bypassed our country, there is only one other thing that he could have meant: that for us the conflict is over, and statism, a government-managed economy, has won. Quote, "The differences today are mainly matters of degree," he stated, "and we cannot understand and attack our contemporary problems if we are bound by the traditional labels and worn-out slogans of an earlier era." Unquote. If we don't use any labels, which means if we never identify the nature of different political systems, we will not discover that we are accepting statism or notice how that switch is pulled on us. Quote, "Each sector of activity must be approached on its own merits," said Mr. Kennedy, "and in terms of specific national needs. Generalities in regard to federal expenditures, therefore, can be misleading. Each case, science, urban renewal, education, agriculture, natural resources, each case must be determined on its own merits if we are to profit from our unrivaled ability to combine the strengths of public and private agencies, public and private purposes, public and private interests." Unquote. When has that been our unrivaled ability? Such a combination is precisely what the American system, a free economy, was not designed to be and cannot support for long. A mixed economy, a mixture of freedom and controls, is an unstable combination anywhere, but particularly unsuccessful here in America, as witness our falling rate of economic growth. The United States was the freest economy in the history of the world. Though some government controls did remain, they were marginal at first and contradictory to the rest of the system. It was the growth of those controls and contradictions that gradually wrecked our economy. Yet, in an oddly casual aside, Mr. Kennedy is slipping in the suggestion that government controls were the distinctive characteristic of the American way of life. That suggestion was strengthened in his speech a few paragraphs later. Quote, "The solid ground of mutual confidence," said Mr. Kennedy, "is the necessary partnership of government with all the sectors of our society in the steady quest for economic progress." Unquote. Partnership is an indecent euphemism for government control. There can be no partnership between armed bureaucrats and defenseless private citizens who have no choice but to obey. What chance would you have against a partner whose arbitrary word is law, who may give you a hearing if your pressure group is big enough, but who will play favorites and bargain your interests away, who will always have the last word and the legal right to enforce it on you at the point of a gun, holding your property, your work, your future, your life in his power? Is that the meaning of partnership? Does such a use of language contribute to the clarity of our national dialogue? government control over all sectors of a society is the essence of the totalitarian state in any of its forms: fascism, communism, Nazism, socialism, and any mixed economy on its sliding way to one of those major four. The differences are mainly matters of degree. No, Mr. Kennedy does not believe that the ideological switch has already been accomplished. That is what his speech was striving to accomplish. It is on the last transitional lap of that fatal slide that it becomes important to silence ideological discussions. Such is Mr. Kennedy's view and preview of our economy. It is not an unprecedented view. Hermann Messerschmitt gave the following description of the Nazi view of their economy. Quote, "The economy serves the state and thus the people. It is a national economy, thus an economic order whose tasks and goals are determined by national events." 1. On the one hand, it is not a state economy, that is, not an economy administered as a whole by the state. 2. On the other hand, it is not an economy of social interests, which in complete self-sufficiency from the state seeks only the highest good of the individual. 3. On the contrary, it is controlled and free at the same time. A. The economy is controlled because it is unconditionally obliged to serve the laws of national life. B. The economy is free because within it, personal creativity and accomplishments can fully develop. Unquote. Clear, isn't it? This sort of verbal chaos, this unintelligible scramble of political terms, which denies that controls are controls and pays lip service to freedom, is typical of fascism. It is also typical of the New Frontier. Mr. Kennedy's address at Yale seemed to be part of an attempt to pull an intellectual coup d'etat.